Damn, this thing's heavy. Hey guys, welcome back. On this episode of Make It Nerdy, we're going to be going over all my fillers. So I get a lot of questions on how I fill something from like this and get something like this. There's a lot of fillers on the market as far as wood filler, Bondo, filler primer, all those different products. I ask, what do I use? And my answer to that is yes. More importantly, I use them all. So this episode we're going to talk about which ones I use and when do I use them. All right, so I thought I had a part of the video where this wasn't already filled in here, but these are big gaps here for different parts. The wing was about 4 different parts. 4 different parts here. And what I did was went ahead and bonded it all together with some staples. So we're not talking about the locking part right in this video. There's another video, I'll put a link in there about the staples right here. So you can see, get a little close here, there's all the staples here. So I went ahead and clipped them and then put a little, use my 3D pen and then fill those gaps in. So we're going to talk about right here, whereas this, on the other wing I had, there was a little bit of misalignment on the printing or the spots, whatever happened here. So I went up fixing it. Eventually I go back here and fix this. But there's going to be a giant gap here. Same thing like what happened over here. As long as we focus, we're going to have these big gaps. So there are a few things to filling big gaps. One thing is we can jump over to a 3D pen. If you have a 3D pen, this is really good for making little fixes and stuff like that. And you just stick in your piece of filament. If you're, when you're 3D printing something, you can go here and fill in all the lines and the gaps. But what you have to do is then you have to get a soldering iron or a flat heat iron, same thing. The system that comes with the staples. So if you're using the staples and have this machine that heats everything up, then you can just use the flat part that goes and heats the plastic. So you'll go ahead and heat the plastic, smooth it all out as much as you can, then go ahead and get a Dremel and then clean up some of the extra parts here. If you're not using the staple option and you don't need to use a 3D pen, we can jump over to a wood filler, right? Something like this. I like to use it in the tube because I'll be able to squeeze it out, squeeze into the sections I want, right? And then this will sand. The good thing about this is there's no fumes. It's wood filler. So you can take this out. You can do this wherever. You can do this on your kitchen table. Don't do it on your kitchen table. And then just go ahead and fill in all the spots and then sand everything out. This will bond very nicely to your prop. Go ahead and sand everything down. If you have really big parts, I'm talking about, let's jump over here. So if you have, see over here, this is all nice and flat over here, flush. This looked like a mess. Actually, no, it wasn't this one. It was that part. So let's jump this over. You can see over here, this is the plastic, right? But over here, that is the big filler Bondo, all right? So this was a mess as far as supports go. This is one of my earliest prints I've done, and we're going to be actually redoing this. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be working on the Gundam again. So what I did was use the Bondo and filled all this in. I was able to smooth this out. Here you see again, this is all a mess. This was the mess back here. But I wanted to save it as much as possible. Only to realize I'm going to be trashing this. So, but that was, again, years ago at this point, and now we are here. This is the Bondo filler. This is the big container. This takes the 2 parts, right? We got the 2 parts for this. The bad part about this is very toxic, very smelly. So if you're going to use this, I advise you doing this outside. Even something in a ventilated area, you have unless you have a really good fan and to pull out all the smell out of your room, I definitely advise this being in an outside environment, and make sure you're using a respirator, because even outside with everything else, it's very strong. Okay, so make sure you use your safety. Make sure you're using the safety respirator on here when you're using this. Also, the other part is when you're using this, make sure you're using just the right amount of the hardening agent, because if you use not enough, if you use too much, it will harden very quickly. but if you don't use enough, it will stay soft, and then when you go to sand it, it'll just, look, as you see, there's a little piece right here, like this. You just scrape it off my nail, but you want it to be where it's like really, like pretty much rock hard. So make sure you guys are using the right amount to this, to the filler. Otherwise, you'll either, it'll harden too quickly on you, or it won't harden at all, and then you'll have soft mess, and then you go to try to sand it, and you'll just ruin your sandpaper. So make sure you guys are using the right ratio to this, okay? So after you've done the big fills, it's going to get to the point where you're going to be doing the fine stuff over here. So we're going to get to the Bondo filler, spot putty, and the filler primer. So before we get to this, you want to hit your prop with the sander. Get a 180 grit, 220, get to 220, and just sand the whole thing. You want to get down to where the layer lines look like. It's really hard to do it on white. You can't see it as much. But if I had black filaments, really good, a darker filament, where it'll just be more of a matte color, so you'll see it all sanded through, right? Once you've done that, then you're going to want to go ahead and do the glazing spot putty. Do the glazing spot putty right to the plastic, okay? When you're doing this, make sure you get the right one. Get the glazing spot putty. If you get the professional one, you're going to need the hardening. So just make sure you're getting the right one. I'll put a link in the bottom down below. Click on the link there. You can get all this stuff here from Amazon, right? So make sure you're getting the correct one over here. And then what I usually use is a piece of foam. This is some scrap foam that I have lying around from different cosplays, different props I'm working on. So this is able to bend and flex to your surfaces. That way you can get a nice smooth. You want to make sure this is smooth straight throughout. That way you're not getting any big clumps. If you have big clumps, you just get a screwdriver or something sharp, and then you can just nick it off. It'll just nick right off. So you don't want to have that problem, and you don't want to have any waste. So, or you can have a regular squeegee sponge thing. I gotta clean this up. This looks like a mess. Yeah. So you have these two things to use for cleaning up and smoothing out your spot filling out your spot putty. So once you have done that and this has dried, give it a couple hours, let it dry. Then you're going to come back, sand it down, check for all the spots, make sure you sand it down. I do a 320, nice and smooth. And then once I am happy with any of the little nicks and whatever, then, and only then, we're going to jump to the filler primer. You can do the 2-in-1, or the other one is the can that just says filler primer. I usually use Rust-Oleum Automotive Primer. There's also the Duplicolor Filler Primer, which is a little more on the higher end. So, but it does a pretty good job with that. Then there's also the brand from Harbor Freight. I like to use that because it's cheap and it's a bit stepper up. It's actually a step up from this, but it's not as readily available as Rust-Oleum, the filler primer, okay? So this is the final coat before you paint. Do not get to this until you've done that, until you've done all these different things over here. This is for the teeny tiny little cracks in your thing. I usually do about 2 coats just to be safe, but if you're going back doing 5 coats, you're doing it all wrong. You're wasting time, you're wasting material. Go through the different steps of filling and doing your props. So when I said, do I use them? Yes, I use them all at different stages of the build. One other thing you can also use is resin. If you happen to have a resin printer, you can use your leftover resin and then have a flashlight to get everything smooth and sand everything out. But with resin, just like with the Bondo and the big Bondo and the Bondo filler, the glazing putty, you do need to make sure you're using a respirator because this is toxic and everything else, and make sure you're also wearing glasses because if this splashes in your eyes, that is very bad. So this is some resin that I have lying around for my resin printer, and I sometimes use it, depends on the prop. I don't like to use it too much because it's a brush. Then you got to use the light, and then you got to go ahead and sand it and everything else. Then you got to clean it with the isopropyl alcohol or denatured gas. There are more steps for this than I like to necessarily need to go through with all the props. So I mainly stick with these items here as far as my daily prop builds. All right, so that's a wrap for this video as far as the filler primers and the products I use and when I use them in particular order to get from, again, from the basic model to a finished product. So guys, if you thought this was informative, make sure you guys are hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed already, please do ahead and go to subscribe so that way we can up this channel here. I know we're pretty heavy over on TikTok and Instagram, and so we're trying to raise up this channel here on YouTube. So that being said, I'm going to jump on finishing out the other wing so that way I can finish this helmet because, as you can notice in the beginning of the video, it's kind of topsy-turvy. And be sure, guys, keep making it nerdy, and I'll see you guys next time.